everyone, and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. Winter breaks were great. We talked a little bit about that, I guess 2 weeks ago now, in an unhinged episode. Had an awesome episode last week with Justin and Lucy, and now it's back to Sierra and Joe to talk a little bit more about this format, how things have been shaping up in the VGC community and the upcoming Pokemon Regional. How's it going today, Joe?
I'm good. I've been vibing. I'm a little bummed we don't have any additional J names this week because this podcast does love those J names. Gotta change to Gyarados at some point. But actually, I've been binge watching Survivor, which I never watch. But my mom's a big Survivor fan, and she's like recorded the whole season and likes to watch it at once. So I went from the guy that just the cliche just looking in the background and slowly starts watching more and more in the
the meme, the show that you weren't interested in and you're just watching at the end, talking the most trash out of anyone.
Yeah, so that's been me for the last couple days. But besides that, everything's been going well. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm really bad at TFT. Also, the 3 weeks that I didn't have a computer did not fare well for my Valorant gameplay either. As well, me and my friends, we've been playing a lot of Catan, and it's gotten really nasty because it's really heated arguments. If this was in person and not just over Discord, there would be some boards flipped and people storming off. It has been,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. It's been fantastic. I mean, it's the real way to prove that your friendships are strong is if you can still be friends after this game. But yeah, no, it's been good. Still really cold in Canada. A lot of snow where I'm at, but
okay. Yeah, I also 2 points on TFT. One, I think I have played 25 games of TFT in the last 2 days, and I have not moved out of Plat 2 the whole time. I was literally one game, I was 95 LP, and all I needed was a 4th and got a 5th, and then an 8th, and I was back down to I was like, oh my god. So I'm just Sisyphus pushing that ball up the hill and having it roll back down. And then 2, I just played a game before we recorded. I got 2nd. I should have got 1st, whatever. I'm not gonna cry about it. But one of my opponents was named Ugarte, Ugarte, but Urgot. And I'm like, does Joe Ugarte have a secret Riot alt account that we're not aware of?
No, we have been because a bunch of me and my friends play TFT, and they're all Joe's friends too, and we have been harassing him to play a TFT because we're first off, Ugarte is so good at VGC, and we've gotten to see the VGC to TFT pipeline. Normally, you pick it up pretty good, and Ugarte is so incredibly smart, especially when he puts a mind to something. So if he started playing, he could be really, really good. But he played once. Obviously, anyone who's played TFT, you can't just play one game and expect to know what's going on. You got to play a couple. There's a lot going on. But he's I don't know what's going on. And he's refused to play. And all of us are Joe, play TFT with us. There'll be 4 of us in call. Joe, play TFT with us. And he's adamant. So not him. That would have been a sick username for him, though. But no, unfortunately, not him.
Also, as we're here, I remember I didn't log into TCG Pocket today. I just had the moment. So I'm going to log in right now because I totally forgot.
I have not logged into TFT Pocket for 3 weeks.
TFT Pocket?
Oh, no. VGC. No, it's TCG Pocket.
Oh my
I said
God.
Every other abbreviation other than TCG before I got there. I'm just going through a list in my mind.
Oh my God, that's brutal.
Okay.
TFT Pocket.
I was talking about Pokemon and draft, and I was thinking about all the ogre pods, and I said Hearthstone, and I just sat there why is this? I was why is this wrong? And everyone was quiet.
Gyarados, let's go!
Yo!
I think I already own them. Is that the good Gyarados? I forget. I gotta hit up Jody. He's got all the tech.
He doesn't know everything about this game.
One more pack.
I'm slowly but surely logging in. Look at this.
While we're here, by the way, as we're opening these packs, wanna make sure give shout to Argenteos. You see on our Discord the cool overlay that they made. That was pretty cool.
So good. So
shout outs.
That'll be on you because you're the one that edits the videos and stuff for YouTube. So
we'll make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Those are so sick. And especially too, taking the time as a color scheme and everything. Thank you so much. That's awesome. All right, Mythical Island. We're opening a pack. Always pick one to the right. Only one to the right. We don't have to get silly about it.
I'm back to the old packs, actually.
Joltik, Leaf, Whirlipede Budding Expeditioner. Oh. I didn't get a cool card.
I did get one of every card in the Muse set, so now I've gone back to the original 3 to try and like get the illustration rares and stuff from that set.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there at this point. Okay.
We have Chansey
pick. Okay, hold on. Chansey pick. This is important. I need a Squirtle. Squirtle's the only promo. I spent like 3 hours spending everything I had for the Blastoise promo last night, and I finally got a Blastoise. Okay, I'm gonna hold on. Everybody, yeah, audio listeners, you're in shambles. But I always go dead middle.
Like, there is 5 cards on screen. Joe Brown is about to flip a card.
Middle. No, it's Charmander.
He did not get the card. It's always
I needed Squirtle.
I always press the top middle, and it's always top left. That's the card that you actually need. But the one time you'll actually press top left, it'll be middle.
It would have been top left if I clicked it.
I'll tell you, every single time, without fail. It has never failed me that the card that I need will always be top left if I press the top center. But again,
That's
one
brutal.
time I pressed the top left, it was top center. I was about to throw my phone. Honestly.
That's why I just don't even choose. I do dead middle no matter what, because that way I can't be upset at myself.
That was the only time I switched up. The only time I've switched it up. Yeah.
Mistakes. Okay, anyway, speaking of mistakes and speaking of Joe Ugarte, I was gonna segue from Ugarte
what
into
a
him
transition
before
that
the TCG.
What is that?
No, I'm saying, were we mistaken compared to Joe, who is correct? Because over the weekend, Sneasler wins the VR tournament with Frederick Hodge Nielsen on a Miraidon team. Sneasler wins a big tournament. It's not an official event, but there's still highly competitive players playing in these Victory Road challenges, right? And everybody, me, Lorcy, Tang, we were all proking and prodding, having our little laughs at Joe's expense, right? From his Sneasler tweet.
Which the original tweet, for those who want to see, by the way, we'll pull it up here.
Oh, nice.
It's original tweet. Y'all who are pretending Sneasler won't be played in Regulation G after people are discovering how broken it really is in Regulation H are kidding yourselves. It has so many good targets and utility for restricted formats. Skull emoji.
Skull emoji is very important to include there. So what do we think about this? If we look at the team, Frederick Hodge Nielsen went 7-2 in Swiss, won the whole thing from Denmark. If you look at the team, he actually has he's got Ursaluna, Blood Moon, as well as Iron Hands, Tornadus, the Farigiraf, and then the Sneasler Electric Seed Core with Miraidon. So, what are your first thoughts with Sneasler winning a tournament?
My first thoughts was I thought you were gonna showcase this, not make me open this one as well.
This is your job. This is your job.
This is my job. All right.
I never do these things.
I wish that we established that as of
you're
the
screen person.
I wish that we established that as of a minute ago. So okay.
Also, and Digizar teaching us how to zoom in as well on the video. It's the first couple times we used this feature. We just had the tiniest little text.
I know how to zoom in. I just thought it would have been visible enough, and no. So now I gotta zoom in and zoom out everything. But no. Whatever is best for our viewers. But yeah, this is the team. So I am very hesitant. First off, with talking about Sneasler and how good it's going to be in the format, when this is early format for this iteration of the format. Obviously, we've had this format before. We had it for a considerable amount of time. But if we're now rediscovering the format, Sneasler is good, I'm kind of hesitant to right away off of one VR be like, yes, this is good. Especially since the response to Joe's tweet talking about Sneasler usage was after the first VR, I believe it was, Sneasler made no impact.
This is the third one.
Is this the third one? All right. So yeah, the first two, it didn't really make an impact. And I do believe that there is inherently going to be a player diff when you see a strong player using a core of strong Pokemon that you can kind of throw in a whatever Pokemon in as the 6th slot. I don't know how utilized it was on the team. I do think with things like Unburden and Electric Seed, it can be strong. But there are so many times that a strong player will show up to an event with a team that they've made, and they're like, I have a 5-mon team because the 6th-mon I didn't pick right. It is useless. And they're still going on these runs. They're still finding success. So I don't think off of one VR, we could be like, yo, it's that. And I'd be curious after Birmingham and San Antonio, if it's actually consistently making a meta impact, is when I think people eat their hats. I think what I think this is a little premature, honestly. Personally, just me.
No, I would agree with you. I think although Frederick is a great player, and obviously there are great players playing in the Victory Road challenges, it's not the same as a live event, the same environment. Looking at the team specifically, like it kind of really does just kind of do one thing, which is just go fast and hit hard with electric attacks, either Miraidon or Iron Hands. I would imagine this Iron Hands is trained pretty speedily, as well as the Ursaluna Blood Moon probably has a lot of speed investment because that's what the Tornadus is there on the team. Like my brain, it almost feels like it's like glitching seeing Sneasler there because of seeing Tornadus. Like my brain just wants to see Urshifu in that slot, like next to Tornadus. You know what I mean? I'm like why is it Sneasler? Why are you using this close combat user instead of Urshifu? But obviously the double speed probably helps. I would imagine Gunk Shot, since it's a higher base power, is like that's there for the Terra Fairy Miraidon mirror matches, and Gunk Shot does more damage than Dire Claw, but also 20% of the time you do no damage with Dire Claw. But then again,
Which then might as well be 50% of the time you're doing no damage.
Exactly. And if you roll sleep, you can't put anything to sleep because of your own electric terrain. So I think that's also a reason not to run Dire Claw in this case. You don't want to, have a bad RNG play like that. But like you said, do we know if Sneasler was the full reason that Frederick was able to win the tournament? No, it was probably Miraidon and Tornadus and stuff making it work. But I think at least people are now going to have to go into Birmingham and San Antonio and remember that it exists. Where could you imagine if it didn't, and then in Birmingham it wins the regional and it cut no VR tours and it just comes out of nowhere?
See, where I think the thing is that there has been this conversation of whether we think Sneasler can be viable going back to Reg G for quite a bit, right? So I don't think that a result here would have necessarily made too much of a difference. I think it's going to be a niche Pokemon on dependent teams. I think when you're looking at something like Miraidon, where you do get that Unburden and the Electric Seed, I think it makes sense. I kind of look at it like I would look at Mian Chao as a Pokemon in the format where there's going to be certain utilities where it helps out on a certain team where you would have it then over Urshifu. So in this team, this Sneasler makes sense. Maybe Sneasler does replace Urshifu in any variation that does want to have a terrain kind of setting Pokemon like this. But for other teams, it'll be Urshifu, and Urshifu is just stronger. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. I don't think we're saying goodbye to Sneasler. I don't think it's going to be the big wave that those that are like, yay, Sneasler think it is. And it's going to be more impactful than those that are saying, we'll never see it again, think it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think this Sneasler in particular, just looking at it, like I'd love to, see how those matches played out, but like because of the double speed, it's like pseudo prankster, right? Because it's going to be so incredibly fast, it's going to be faster than every other fake out, faster than every other coaching. You have the Iron Hands with Assault Vest. If it's trained in a speedy way, you can essentially give the coaching to Iron Hands every turn, and it's got a special defense boost from Assault Vest, and then an attack and defense boost from coachings multiple turns in a row, and it's moving fast under Tailwind and stuff. So I think that's probably what its role was like to just help Iron Hands get stronger with coaching, and then also to help win the Miraidon mirrors. So maybe there's matches like against Zamazenta or I don't know, Kyogre, maybe it's not as important, just thinking of restrictions off the top of my head. But since we know Miraidon is going to be such a big problem, I don't mind your idea of like a 5-mon team and then teching that 6th slot for the Miraidon mirror.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely just be team dependent. But we also saw this back in Reg G where Urshifu, it wasn't Reg G or right before that, I can't remember, but essentially it was the battle between Water Ogerpon and Urshifu, where one would skyrocket as everyone adapts to build that, and then
I think it was F. Yeah.
Was it F? And yeah, it just kind of like up and down. And I think Sneasler will be the exact same with where it falls. Like not to the same extent, but like some events, depending on where meta is, depending on how many like Terra Fairy things there are, we might see it uptick a little bit, and then people respond, Sneasler is going to be obsolete. Sneasler's obsolete, so we go back to Terra Fairy things. We see the usage uprise a little bit, just kind of vice versa. Like where I think it's fun with this, with the Gunk Shot and stuff, is also just the amount like of pressure you'll put on against all these Terra Fairy Pokemon. So that's kind of really nice, but again, it'll be around, just not to this extent.
Yeah, I just thought it would be fun to have the conversation since, I feel like our boy Ugarte's gotten many of meme tweets in his direction after the first couple of Victory Road challenges that he deserves a little bit of redemption here on this one, even if it's not going to hold throughout the entirety of Reg G. But you look through the rest of the top cut, at least, of this Victory Road challenge. There's a Zamazenta, a Shadow Rider, Miraidon, Zamazenta, Kyogre, Zamazenta, Shadow Rider. So I feel like Shadow Rider, Zamazenta, Miraidon, that's the clear, now that we've had more time for this format to develop, those are the clear big three.
The which one, sorry?
Miraidon, Zamazenta, and Shadow Rider. They make up 6 of the top 8.
Interesting. I mean, yeah. I'm just kind of more so like, where's Ice Rider with
I'm wondering
this?
the same thing.
But again, VR, it definitely gives a lot of good stepping stones of where we're going to be, but where exactly people will be once we get to Birmingham, that will be the biggest thing. But I also feel like specifically with the Miraidon and the Calyrex Shadow Rider specifically, that was the one that everyone feared. Actually, even just more so than Miraidon, because Miraidon was kind of like, and then Rajan won with it. It was like, oh, okay, this actually really is a big Pokemon. But Calyrex Shadow Rider from the get-go was super feared, and then didn't make an impact quite a few events.
And then before we move on, I do want to get your thoughts here, Sierra, on 9th place Feng Zhe's team. He's from China with Groudon as his restricted. Last week, Lorcy Tang and I had a discussion on Groudon and how Groudon has kind of had a resurgence in this Reg G 2.0 where people are using like jump pluff teams with Groudon and some of the traditional Sun stuff. But looking at Feng Zhe's team, it's kind of like just all photosynthesis. He's got Volcarona as a fire type to begin with, but then you got the Gouging Fire and Raging Bolt on the squad, just like trying to activate the that extra boost in the Sun. So what are your thoughts, since you weren't here last week? What are your thoughts on Groudon as we re-enter Reg G?
I think it's like the same thing when you go back or like into a format where it's like, let's try all the things. I think like early Reg G beforehand, there's a lot of people trying to like work with Koraidon, for example, and Koraidon never ended up necessarily having the impact that maybe those people would have liked. And Koraidon was the pickup after people had tried Groudon and didn't necessarily succeed at that. So I think this is just like normal early format. I'm very intrigued out of like the team, the Gouging Fire in particular, because I think that definitely is like a really strong early format Pokemon while people are still kind of figuring around with the format. But if you're looking at, we're going to have a Sun user, I definitely think having stuff like this Raging Bolt and the Gouging Fire make a lot of sense. So I don't know. I'd be intrigued. Like, I think just going from going into the format, I know some people aren't necessarily looking forward to it because like, we've already discovered it. But we're having Sneasler back. People are playing around with Groudon a little bit more. I think people are trying new, different ideas, which I think could liven up the format just a wee little bit.
I do like that the team has 2 protects right up my alley, just a bunch of choice bands, salt
Isn't
vest,
that one
snow.
Protect too many?
You could argue. You could argue, but
people have been saying.
Yeah, anything else on Victory Road, or we anything else stand out to you?
I think it's just like, again, it's an online thing. We get to see there is the Wheezing Donzo Tatsu. There's some Rain Kyogre, Serena. It's just all kind of, there isn't a Terapagos until 10th, but Terapagos was always a Pokemon that like sometimes really good, but sometimes struggled depending on who was playing it. So yeah. And
Terapagos won the prior Victory Road tournament, but to go from 1st to 10th, a little rough for the Terapagos fans out there, but we can move on. Good luck to Sneasler in Birmingham and San Antonio as the quote unquote villain of VGC. You see what I did there, Sarah?
I see what you did. I'm assuming that is going to be our transition into our next conversation of the podcast. So we're starting off the podcast. Not only were we talking about the Sneasler, but we were talking about what has been happening on the VGC Twitter, like Twitterverse, because people have been chatting. I think like something over the winter break, everyone's chilling. We're being able to talk a lot. But another one of the big discourses that has been coming out has been this concept of villains and heroes in VGC and kind of like that storyline, which is a really interesting conversation for a couple of different reasons. So, first off, when people
I do want to ask, do we need Frederick's Sneasler team on the screen still for it? Anyway, continue.
My bad.
I'm just saying.
I was cooking.
You were cooking
over here. I was having.
That's my bad. That's my bad.
Yeah. All right. So I gotta remember where exactly I was at. Yes. Heroes, villains. A lot of the conversation has come out after specifically Toronto and stuff, and kind of looking forward into this game because realistically, when you look at VGC, it's really unique in terms of the other video games out there because it is a game that originally it's a kid's game. And when you are looking at people who are actively competing, it's not just the Masters division, but you have the seniors and juniors as well. But broadcast for majority of the events, as well as majority of the player base, is from the Masters division. And when you look at other esports, there is some people that are hailed as heroes and some as villains, for better or for worse, which kind of creates storylines. So the biggest discourse has been, is this necessary in VGC and to kind of what capacity?
So I always find this conversation interesting because it's always like it always comes from a good place because people want to grow the game, right? That's the old cliche of they want the game to grow and expand and how can we get more people to watch? But like it always feels like it's an artificial way to grow the game. It's not like a natural way, you know what I mean? Like, oh, let's force a guy to be a villain on stream and then people will watch because he's the bad guy and stuff. And it's like, you know, how do you determine villain, right? Villain is a perspective thing, right? If I'm a Yankees fan, the Red Sox are villains. And if I'm a Red Sox fan, the Yankees are villains. If I'm like, you know, if I watch League of Legends, TSM was a villainous organization to everyone except for the millions of fans that had TSM t-shirts and, you know, and flags and stuff, that they're not the villains. So like, we're kind of like arbitrarily trying to create something that doesn't really exist in full context. Like there is no quote unquote full villain. We're not gonna have a guy out there that's the Joker or the Green Goblin playing Pokemon. Like, you know, even a villainous tendency player is still gonna have people root for them. So I kind of don't know why we come back around to this conversation all the time when we don't really need it.
I feel like where the conversation is stemming from, at a core, which is then where gets really interesting specifically for us too, is it comes from a storytelling perspective on the broadcast and all of this other stuff. And it then brings into question too, like what I've been thinking about with it is there an issue with like how I'm trying to tell stories or how things are being conveyed to where we're now trying to artificially make things up because we're not doing a good job? That's kind of been my biggest thing in looking at it. And I think it's also then it goes back to, it's weird because again, it's a kids game. So I don't know. I've been reflecting a lot on it and like there's so many different answers. And I think it's like so much matter of opinion because I do agree with you that you can't artificially create this. And I also think that someone like, if we're just going out there like, yes, we're trying to be bad, that's negative for the growth of the game. So where I think I've landed on it is like, same with you. It's perspective. Like when I look at like Wolf, for example, I think there was discourse whether he was a hero or for a villain. And that, again, is your opinion. Do you like seeing the same person win events over and over? If not, well, then he's a villain to you, right? Whereas if you are rooting for him and you're a fan, then he's going to be a hero. Someone else that I think, especially with this season, that up in the air, but there is still the storyline for, is Ugarte. Because Ugarte has been using this Jump Left Sun team. And there's been some people, like every time you see him on broadcast, there's either people that are like, let's go, because he's gotten top cut after top cut. And there's others that are like, I hate the team that he's using. I hate how he's playing this game. I don't like it. I don't respect it. So he is a villain in my eyes because he's going out there at this jump left, clicking sleep powder, right? Which is then that's where I think the storytelling maybe on our end could come through a little bit more in kind of amplifying like these already tendency stories that we're gonna have. And like an example of it where like then Ugarte was a hero was last season or season before, I guess, where he got the second place and first. Because after that first, like he was a hero because he finally did the thing, right? So I don't know. That's an interesting one that like even like off podcast, I feel like we could talk about a lot, especially as a caster group. But that'd be, I don't know. It's an interesting one.
It's interesting because I had never actually thought of it from a broadcast perspective. Like the conversations going on online are like, are we not doing good enough job? Because like, I don't want to say I'm like apathetic to the conversation, but like even if under the pretense that Joe is a villain, right? And I'm rooting against him because I hate sleep powder, right? But like if Joe wasn't in that top 4 match, that person that's rooting against him still is watching the top 4 match. Like they're watching it because it's a Pokemon regional and they play VGC and they're watching VGC. Like sure, it might be more fun to root for or against a player, but like inherently, I don't think more people watched because Joe was in and I'm therefore hate watching. You know, I don't know if we're at that point in the scene. Like obviously when Wolf watches and the numbers go up and people like, I don't think that's necessarily hate watching. I think more people are coming in to root for him to see it. And the people that were already watching, they're the hate watchers, right? But they were already watching the event anyway. So it's not like we increased viewership to have a villain to root for or root against. And you know, as like we talk about the perception of like, you know, one person's a villain to a hero, as my good friend Jeff Probst from Survivor would say, perception is reality, right? So if you think someone's a villain and you don't like them, then no matter what they do, they could be using, you know, Pikachu and Eevee and Blastoise and Charizard. Like it doesn't matter. You're going to be rooting against them anyway because that's your perception. You don't like that player. We know there are people on stream that come up and they're like, oh, I just don't want this guy to win just because I don't like him. Or conversely, the other way around, I want this guy to win because he's my friend and I want him to win, even if he like, I don't know, doesn't donate to charity or something like that. Maybe he's not a great guy outside of Pokemon.
That's such a weird like.
If he's, I'm trying to keep it PG here, Sierra. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't want to say kick puppies, which now I have said kick puppies. But if he's nice on stream and he's my friend, I want him to win regardless if he kicks puppies off stream. You know what I mean?
I don't think too, like to rephrase on things, like I don't think the thing is like we should be branding someone as a villain or that viewership is going to go up on whether somebody hates or loves a player. I think where it goes into like a broadcasting sense is like the players don't get to tell their story for majority of the time that we see them on camera. The only time they do is if they get interviewed, and they only get interviewed if they win, or the secondary interview if they win an entire event. But everything else is like the storyline that we've built for them. So like Aurelian Sula last year was literally always the second place. Like always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Like always so close to getting that first place spot, but couldn't. Choppa had that same storyline until he won Toronto 24. And where he finally, like that hard work that he's put in, like paid off. And like that's where like the storyline comes in that we could be telling. Which is where I think that's like our responsibility for how those players can get viewed. And we shouldn't brand anyone as a villain, but if somebody is consistently like getting top cut with a team that everybody hates, there is a way to tell that to where people can take their perception of that situation and decide then whether they think that person is a hero or a villain based off of that story that we've been building along for them.
Yeah, and I do think that it can happen organically, right? Like the narrative of I don't remember who tweeted it, but it was like, we act like we don't have villains and there's people that play Dondozo teams and they play Spam teams, right? Like, so like we have people that are playing teams you don't like. There is your villainous, you know, tendency for them, but like those strategies are not as consistent sometimes unless it's like Chuppa or Carson or Justin Knox, like some of the best players in the country using Dondozo. So like are you going to use a Dozo team because you're a jerk? Like, you want to make people feel bad because you're using Dozo, or do you think it's the best strategy? Like, Chuppa thinks it's the best strategy to win. So it's kind of like, I think my opinion on it is we keep circling back to, we're trying to artificially create something that doesn't actually need to exist, because, like, I don't know, if Dondozo won like 6 events in a row, I don't know, maybe we would all start rooting for it more because everybody likes winning. So like, it's only right now because it's fringe and like it's a negative play style, but perception's reality. Maybe we would all start rooting for those players more. Like, if I don't know, if Justin Tang won 5 regionals with Dondozo, I don't think we would be calling him a villain. It's about the person and their personality, right?
Yeah, well, I definitely like I agree 1,000%. Like, the story should never artificially be made. Like, whether that is on Twitter, whether it's us, whether it's players, like there should never be an artificial story. It should be organic. It's being able to tell it when it arises. And then I think this is where this kind of ties in with the next subject, which is moments in the game and like these players and like the ties to whether like this player, the Pokemon that gets the attention, on how things are also perceived. Because when we're talking about like this Dondozo, like, I don't think someone who uses a Dondozo is a villain. I do think that if somebody's using a strategy that is always like up in the air on how people feel about it, and that is something that they're known for, regardless of results, that they can start getting that image painted of them simply for that. Like, I think it's similar to like Super Smash Bros, for example, whereas somebody who is successful but with a character that people don't like,
a lame character,
is going to be branded as a villain regardless of their skill expression, but is doubly so for their skill expression, and that's kind of like where I think. Whereas like solely just somebody using the character isn't going to be a villain, because if you're using the character, like, who cares if you're just using the character? You have to be using the character and consistently good with it to then have people be like, oh, you're a villain, which then on the flip side is also still people being like, oh, you're a hero because you're doing this all the time, right? So it goes back to the perception, but I think that's kind of like the interesting. But where I was saying it kind of goes into with the next conversation is, I think there's a really interesting discussion in Pokemon about the moments in the game and the history of the game, and where I'll get into a moment where I think it all ties in. But where this conversation comes from is there was a big discourse on Twitter about this Station Park Pachirisu moment, because there is a really, really funny meme with it around that I've been trying to pull up, but it was a video and it played sound and it hurt my ears, and that's why I missed what Joanne said earlier. But from that, there was the big conversation of, this is the only known thing to happen in Pokemon VGC, which then shows that it's a game that there's not much interesting happening in. And from there has been a lot of conversation on what does constitute a good play, what should be noticed, what makes it outside of the community. And I think there's a further discussion on there with what is like the Pokemon getting the attention versus the player. Because I think where there is an issue with the Pachirisu moment, where people are comparing it, is that was a player and a Pokemon. Whereas some other moments are just the player or just the Pokemon, which then the other side is using as a dispute on why that can't be a moment,
Yeah, I think that's a great point to, I was just like, I was kind of looking at the discourse. I didn't really engage in any of the conversations, but like, there was really a part of me that really wanted to reply to it and be like, oh, there's no other historic Pokemon moments besides Pachirisu. Well, here is a whole playlist on YouTube of all of these historic championship moments throughout the history of competitive Pokemon. If you're interested, you can actually learn about some of the things that, yes, Pachirisu is included, of course, but it's only one of the videos that are in that series. So obviously I took a little offense to like only one thing's ever happened in the game, because clearly it's just not true, right? As we saw from the championship history videos. But one of the unique things, I do agree that some of the drama from that conversation was increased by mentioning the P word, by mentioning Pachirisu in the Pokemon community. Obviously, that does bring a lot of emotion to the conversation, because that is a lot of people's entry point into the game competitively. There is clearly, myself included. Right, exactly. There's clearly a connection between that moment and people's decision to play Pokemon competitively. So it's almost impossible to have a fully nuanced and non-emotional subject regarding Pachirisu. But even if we take Pachirisu out of the conversation, but you have a point, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the thing is when you look at the game, every game is going to have a top moment. You can have a bunch of top moments, but
Correct.
one of them inherently is going to be the top. And I think for VGC, in my opinion, and based off conversations like others as well, Pachirisu is the top moment. I think where the conversation gets interesting is people are saying other top moments in terms of that conversation of all these top moments, but then people say no, because it's not the same. Because it won't be the same. But that's no longer the conversation. The conversation is other top moments, but I think that's where things kind of get confused and where the conversation gets muddled, right? Because every other moment that you're mentioning and that you've made videos about and all that are top moments, but people are looking for something that is on the same level as the Pachirisu moment, which it won't be because that is our game's top moment.
Yes,
like the simple
exactly. It's you're kind of asking for something. It's not fair. It's not going to be on the same level. And you know, a lot of the conversation was like, oh, but Pokemon doesn't break containment, right? That was the phrase used a lot. It's not breaking out into other gaming or other esports scenes when there are hype things that happen, like I don't know, like a double rock slide flinch to win a region, or like, you know, Riley with the crit ice beam freeze onto the Corselia, right? Like that doesn't break containment. But then some of the examples that were given about like things that break containment into the general gaming sphere outside of the games, they talked about Evo, right? And for those who don't watch the fighting game event, like some of those examples that were given, they're Street Fighter fans or they're fighting game fans, and then it became just a generally famous moment on social media that happened. They were playing, it was last year's Evo event, they were playing Street Fighter Third Strike, which is a very old game, and they brought it back for like an anniversary or something. I don't know, it's just been a long time. It's a very beloved fighting game from the past. And this guy that made top 8 and he won on stage, he won this incredible game with a character called Hugo, who's just like this big, like, you know, he's like not cool looking or whatever, and he's not a top tier, he's not Chun-Li, he's not Ken, he's not Yoon, he's not the like the top tier threshold. So like there's a little Pachirisu effect there, right? That I could argue that it's this guy using a, let's say, mid-tier character, because there's not a lot of characters in the game, doing something crazy, winning crazy, and then he's doing splits on stage, and he's doing all these athletic things, and like the whole reason that broke containment was that it was a character that was unconventional, let's say, maybe not as popular as Chun-Li and Ken are in that game, and it was a unique perspective of this player, of this personality on stage, the same way that Seijun had a personality with the Pachirisu. He was doing splits and everything. And I think you bring that back to Pokemon and say, even if we don't mention Pachirisu, a part of what needs to break containment is the unexpected nature of it, right? So even if you make the craziest Ogerpon Hearthflame play you've ever seen in your life, okay, well, it's a good Pokemon, right? Like, if you make the craziest Calyrex Ice Rider play I've ever seen in my life, and I'm going to tweet about how amazing it was, okay, well, it's still a good Pokemon. The reason Pachirisu was so big was that casuals knew that it was just a cute little Pikachu clone, and it had never done anything competitively, and it's on the field with Tyranitar, Salamence, and Garchomp, 3 of the greatest Pokemon in VGC history. There is context as to why it was so big. So, like, my pushback is that we have had other things break containment, it's just not to the level, as you're saying, nothing can be on Pachirisu's level. For example, Jeremy Rodriguez winning a regional with Eevee in 2017 absolutely broke containment. There was IGN articles, GameSpot articles, like the whole gaming world were like, cute little Eevee just won a regional, and you know, like it was a big deal. And the other one that would have been, you could argue, what could have been the next Pachirisu moment would have been if Hirofumi won Worlds with Umbreon in 2019 when he got second place with that Umbreon team. Umbreon, arguably like a top 10, top 15 favorite Pokemon of all time by many of the Pokemon world. If Umbreon won Worlds when it was unexpected to, there could have been a moment for, you know, same in the Pachirisu vein. So like, we do have the potential, but like, I don't know, we're unfairly or harshly, I should say, grading what breaks containment, because it's not easy to do.
Well, I also think, like, exactly with like the criteria of breaking containment, because then like there is so much of this discourse, and people would be like, well, like, what is breaking containment in other games? First off, what I saw most of the time was one moment per game that people were listing, which
fighting
we
games
have
is the
which
Evo
we
moment
have our
37, right?
which we have our one moment. So why are we getting like harshly criticized for having our one moment? But it was also like, it's funny enough because a lot of these moments that people were saying broke containment, I have never seen. Or I
Right.
have only seen because I have looked up videos to explain the moment, to explain the significance, which was also the same thing that people said that you could not do for VGC to have a moment be up there. So, like, I love watching video essays, like, specifically love ones for, like, speed running and stuff, but, like, there has been I think there's this one about the Smash player that, like, me and Ugarte have watched, like, 5 times. It's, like, an hour and a half long, and it's not something that would have been breaking containment in our sphere, but we sought out to watch it and understand, and it was a cool story. And it's got a lot of views with someone sitting there and explaining what's happening, because sometimes that little extra context is what's needed to fully appreciate a moment. And so many games have a lot of that. So again, it goes into, I don't understand why VGC out of all things was unfairly targeted. I do think that there is games where it is going to be, you will never really quite have that moment. I think TCG is unfortunate for being one of those games because it's a game that I think always requires some extra context, whereas
Right.
Pachirisu doesn't necessarily. And then other moments would. And then other games would have, there's the one moment that doesn't need the context. Here's 10 that do, right? So it was just, I don't know. It seemed like a weird conversation on that aspect. It's like,
Well,
why are you coming at
but
me? What did
here's the
you
interesting
do?
thing with Pachirisu. Like, let's in on the dirty little secret here, Sierra. I guarantee there are casual Pokemon fans that love and have an appreciation for the Pachirisu moment that have never actually watched the match. I guarantee it. They like the story, right? The cute little Pachirisu that could.
Pachirisu
They
that
have
kid?
no interest in VGC. They have no interest in the metagame and how to learn to play, like learning to play competitively. But at its core, it's the story of this little rodent that had no business being on the field with these titans of Pokemon and being a very huge reason as to why Sejun was winning. So, like, could it happen again? Yes, like I said, I think Umbreon, if it won, would have been a big deal. We'd be having people with Umbreon posters and people making fan arts of, Umbreon winning worlds and whatever. But, like, no matter whatever happens next time, like, you can't break the original thing that made the game bigger. You know what I mean? And even
Yeah.
on the TCG end, you mentioned, remember last year there was that Squavit moment, that one regional where, like, I forget what Squavit does, but like, it looks at your top card. And I remember, like, I think Puka was casting. Like, it was a big deal, and the guy needed exactly one card on the top of his deck. This is regional finals, like the last play of the game, and he flips it over, and it's the exact card that he needed. And that was everywhere. Everyone in the venue was going crazy. Everyone on Twitter was going crazy. But, like, my aunt doesn't know, my cousin doesn't know that moment. Like, it's just like, sometimes some exciting things don't have to be enjoyed by outsiders for you to enjoy it, because it feels like some of the conversation is like, man, I wish others were also enjoying what I enjoy and what we enjoy in this community. But, like, it's all right. Like, I don't know anything about StarCraft. I'm happy for whatever crazy StarCraft plays go off for StarCraft fans. I don't need to know what's going on for them to appreciate their community's moments.
And I also don't think that, like, the game's, like, worth is off of if a moment can be digestible by people who don't understand the moment, because sometimes you need to understand the moment. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you need that little extra context. It's like, there's going to be some movies, to bring it back to, like, the movie stuff, because you love movies, there's going to be some movies where there is going to be a clip that, as a standalone clip, can be enjoyed. It'll go viral on TikTok. It'll go viral on YouTube Shorts. And there's going to be some that will not, because it does not make sense unless you have the context beforehand. But the context beforehand will make that clip great. The clip is not great just because you don't have that little bit of context beforehand that you need. And I think that's the thing with the game. Every game has their one moment. That is our moment. And it's okay that for other moments for you to fully appreciate that you might have to listen to someone yap for a couple minutes on YouTube. That is okay. That is literally every other game. Every other game. Like,
yeah, I mean,
what?
we still call back to, you know, like people talked about like, I think Evan made a tweet of like, what are general gaming moments that everybody knows about?
No, I didn't know any of them that were listed.
And that's what people were saying. Now, I knew every one of them because I knew what he was talking about because I've also been in that community. I've been in that scene watching those competitive matches. And so we couldn't even agree on the general ones that everyone knows.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, of course, like, there is going to be, and I think this is where the conversation gets extra muddled because people that are deep in the community might name things that are getting to be a little bit too niche, which is then being used as ammunition as to why the concept doesn't work, which I think is going to be part of the issue there. But I think once you put that aside, you look at the other things that we have, see that, hey, maybe you need a little explanation. They're not the Pachirisu moment. We're all in agreement. We can't hit the Pachirisu moment. We can then be like, yeah, there is things that can be enjoyed. You can explain that in a YouTube short. You have enough time. You just need that little extra, even just like something like that WolfieCon Parish moment.
Right.
Once you need the tiniest little bit of context. And once you do,
then it's the coolest
oh my God,
moment. Yeah.
It is the coolest thing. But without that context, it means nothing.
Yeah, I know Scrawl VGC does a lot of great stuff with the YouTube shorts of like explaining really good moments that, you know, are World's Finals or just like really nice, nicely done plays. So shout outs to him. But yeah, we're trying to grow. We can argue we're growing too quickly because we don't have enough chairs for everybody at the venues. So, you know, we're trying to grow the game.
Moment. We can't have another Pachirisu moment. We don't have enough spots.
Bro, we might not have it because the player that would win the next Pachirisu moment might not even register for the event in time. You might not have as good of internet as everybody else.
Yeah. Project.
It's brutal.
Tough out here. We're too successful, gosh darn it. All right.
And then just to end it, I would just say, for anyone that thinks that there's only been one historic moment, please just watch the championship histories. We got Pokemon Go, we got TCG, we got VGC. I think there's like 12 or 13 videos made over the last couple of years. So if you think there's just one thing that's been cool in Pokemon's history, you're greatly mistaken.
Yeah. So, yep, that has been OHKO on all the Twitter stuff that's been going on. But that isn't the only thing happening in the VGC sphere because now that winter break is done, drum roll, we got a regional coming up over in EU.
Yes, we have the Birmingham Regionals, which is not in Alabama, even though there is a Birmingham, Alabama that is very famous. It's in England, and every time I don't know if it's supposed to be a bad person, Sierra, or like I don't know if it's a neutral person thing. Every time I see Birmingham, I have no idea what part of England Lee is from. Our good friend Lee Provost. But I like to imagine him saying the word like Birmingham or something in his accents. And I'm just like, he's got the coolest English accent. So I hope Lee is there. I hope he has fun in Birmingham. And I hope he says it as cool as I think he would say with his accent.
Your brain is fascinating for that to be the thought.
That's what I think of, like Birmingham. Like I think of his like deep voice. You know, Lee, you worked with Lee. Like, you know how his voice is. Like, I think it'd be cool to hear him say it. I just don't
see like names and just be like, I wonder how Lee would say this. Like, that's just not a thought in my head. I don't think I've thought that about anyone.
He's the man. Lee runs. He's rent free in my head all day. You know, he's the best.
All right. Well, hopefully he's there. Hopefully you'll get to hear him say it. If not, we'll just have to send him a message and ask really nicely if he can record it just for you. But regional coming up, and it is going to be the first one of Regulation G, which is going to be, I know people were not necessarily the most excited to go back, depending on who you're asking. Some people are really looking forward to it. But what are our expectations for heading back to a regulation we have already played?
I'm actually pretty interested in how this will go the second time around, because I think a lot of it was people trying to figure out what's good, right? And like trying to get that information all leading up to the World Championships, so they could be the most prepared for Worlds that they can. And now that everyone's kind of like blown their secret, right, of what they brought to Worlds, like there's nothing to hold back anymore, which that's why I'm excited that we might have even more unhinged teams this time around, because there's nothing like, this is not our Worlds format, it is our EUIC format, but like there's no reason to hold, like if you're going to Birmingham and EUIC, there's no reason to hold your EUIC team, because you're like, everybody already knows the good Pokemon, so you might as well bring that crack team to, you know, Birmingham or San Antonio as well. So I'm excited for that.
Unless you've just discovered something off the wall, because I do think that there is going to be, like, where I think it's going to be interesting is everybody was like, all hell's broken loose, bring out the best stuff for Worlds. But what if somebody sees that, gets inspired, and takes one step further from that? Or if what we saw from Worlds with some of these little trends emerging, how things are like going to be like switching up just a little bit. So I do think that there is going to be that room that maybe things will be still kept secret for EUIC if there is that adaptation coming from Worlds. But I think that's going to be the biggest thing with seeing how things were at Worlds and kind of going from there. And if there is really much room to go from there, like, are we going to have like an early format where the first regional is a little funky because we're like, I gotta try and break the mold off what we got to see last time. Then we realized that wasn't good. We had a mold for a reason, and we just go right back into that. And it's time for EUIC, or if it's going to be quite different. Because I'm remembering back with Sword and Shield as well, when we had our repeated formats, like it got stale and it kind of sucked, frankly. I am hopeful with how the VRs have gone that this one won't exactly be the same. And the fact that we have had a Worlds, which one wasn't quite the same, if I recall, from the last ones, that it could not be the case for this, but I don't know.
Well, I think, to me, the clear-cut decision now from what we saw how Worlds evolved, because, you know, we saw a bunch of Terra Bug electric types to get around, you know, being weak to ground, and we saw Iron Treads as a response into Raging Bolt and into Miraidon, is that, like, I do think this now going Regi 2.0 is a format that is Miraidon versus the world. I think it is. Beforehand, we had probably 5-6 restricteds that were like, okay, these are all like, they're all 6 so clearly better than the other ones that like any of them could walk into an event and be the favorite to win, or be a 30% usage depending on the day. But I don't think that's possible now. I do think it's Miraidon is most likely the most used. If it's not, it's going to be close, but like, it's such a dominant Pokemon that you have to like build your whole core around it, like Frederick did, right? Frederick had Miraidon plus Ursulina Blood Moon, who's immune to Miraidon, plus Sneasler, who uses Electric Seed and has Gunk Shot for Terra Fairy Miraidon, plus Iron Hands, who has the Quark Drive ability to get the attack boost, plus an electric attack to do more damage in electric terrain. And then, like, remember, people used to use Terra Ground on Furrygraph and stuff. Like, I think that's what's going to be interesting with Birmingham and San Antonio, is like, is the format as Miraidon pilled as I think it is going to be?
It's just, I guess it's going to be whether people are like wanting to play what is quote unquote the strongest restricted, or play up against it, which is then leads into like that everlasting circle. If that's what it's going to be, then you'll have restricted number 3 that, you know, could be good against both of them.
That's the Zamazenta angle, right?
Through. Yeah.
Because Zamazenta, I think, is a very fascinating Pokemon that right now is strong on its own. It's just a strong, generally solid Pokemon with good defenses and solid offensive output. But this is the Zamazenta waiting room. If we all assume the next format and Worlds format will be the 2 restricted format that we anticipate it to be, that is where Zamazenta will shine. Right now, sometimes it feels like choosing Zamazenta as your restricted is just kind of like good stuff. It's kind of just generally solid. But then when you can make Zamazenta your secondary restricted, the way that Zacian was the secondary restricted in Sword and Shield to Kyogre or Groudon or Shadow Rider or whoever, like, that's when the dog's going to pop off. So right now, I feel like let's appreciate the Zamazenta only being 20% usage right now, because next format as a secondary restricted, it's going to be able to solidify so many cores.
Interesting, but it's definitely weird going into the first regional of the season with things to necessarily talk about with stuff. So I know for a little bit of our talking points, we had a couple of predictions that we were going to do for Birmingham.
Yeah, we're going to keep it simple this time around. We'll do more predictions for San Antonio. Just do a couple of, get us restarted, cleanse our palates a little bit here at the beginning of Regi. So we only have 3 questions this time around for our predictions. And I think they're still important They're still important questions, but we'll save like maybe 5 or 6 for San Antonio because we have these coming back to back, right? So the first question, our good buddy Urshifu is back. He's back. Maybe not better than ever because he's always the best, so he can't be better than the best, right? But the question is how many excuse me, Urshifu Rapid Strike will there be in top 8? We're not doubling down, Sierra. No single strike to be had in this discussion. Just Rapid Strike in top 8 of Birmingham.
I'm going to say 4.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Going right down the middle there.
50%.
Now, do you think
there'll be a single strike, and I think there will be one Sneasler?
So that's what I was going to ask, if the 4 was impacted because you think other Pokemon are filling that slot, that fighting slot on the team.
Yeah, if we didn't have the whole Sneasler thing, I would say 5. But I do think, especially with Miraidon teams and potentially utilizing that, I don't think every Miraidon team will swap over, but I do think some might, and I think one will be able to sneak in with it because of that.
Okay.
So, yeah. Or shoot for Rapid Strike.
I'm feeling 5. I have no idea about Single Strike, no idea about Sneasler, but I just think I was looking at some of the Victory Road events, and there's a lot of Rapid Strike. We know how great of a Pokemon it is, and people are going to have like somewhat of a return to normalcy effect. Everyone wants to hate on their Shifu, but then when it comes back, everyone starts using it again. Like, we all hate on Incineroar, and then 52% of LAIC was Incineroar or something like that, right? So it's a comfort pick, it feels like, for most VGC players. So I'm going to say 5 Rapid Strike in top 8.
Okay, that was the other number I was going to go with. So good number, good answer.
We're thinking aligned here. All right, second question. This one is a little more wide open. Now, I did just say it is Miraidon versus the field, in my opinion. But we have a whole field to choose from here. Which restricted Pokemon will win the Birmingham Regionals?
Am I going first?
Do you need time to think, or
Nope.
do you want me to go? Or
I got my answer.
All right, go ahead.
Zamazenta.
Ooh, how come?
Because of the player that I'm going to predict to win.
I'm not predicting that player. I'm not predicting that. I know who you're predicting, but I because I anticipated it, I was like, I'll throw her a bone this time. I'm not going to cut her off like she usually gets her predictions
every single time
from under her. Is there any other reasons besides the player, or is the player influencing your opinion?
I do think that going into it, if we do think that Miraidon is public enemy number 1, I think people are going to have their answers into it. I do think it's still going to have a strong representation, whatnot. But I think when we're looking at early format, people starting to learn, and these picks coming on through, I think when you're already looking at a Worlds format that had a good chunk of really strong players on Miraidon, for Zamazenta to still push its way through, even though there wasn't too many, I think can work out, and I think that'll be something that people will pick, kind of the more comforty sort of stuff heading right back into the format for the first event.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think along the same lines of, like, I'm going with Chalk, right? I'm trying to go with a return to normalcy with their Shifu, that, like, I am going to take Miraidon as the pick. I think it's the clear cut. Even if it loses and I look like an idiot and there's like only one Miraidon in top 8 or whatever, like, I think it's the play right now. It's so strong.
It's not like you're picking Lugia. You're still picking a strong restricted. You're exactly fine.
Like, to me, it is so fascinating that Miraidon, like, Whimsicott is like kind of tied to this Miraidon team for Tailwind. It's like we need the prankster Tailwind Pokemon to boost 135 speed Pokemon to win the mirrors because he's weak to Dragon. It's like, it's just so bizarre world to me that, you know, that's how crazy the speed tiers have gotten in Reg G. But yeah, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Miraidon to take home the title.
Okay.
All right. Last question.
3.
The most important question, Sierra, which we've never gotten right. Maybe one day we'll get close. You theoretically could have been right at some point if you just stuck to your gut. So this time around, I need you to stick to your gut. No second guessing. This is where we get ourselves in trouble. Which
Eyes
player?
Closed, eat first, can't lose.
Which player will win the Birmingham Regional Championships?
Michael Kelsch.
I knew that was your player. That's why I was.
Yeah.
I'm trying to act surprised.
We're supposed to. I feel so bad because sometimes, like, we get told it's Mikael or Michelle or.
I'm saying Michael. His name's
I don't
Michael.
know.
Okay?
I have personally been told Michael by people that I should be trusting on this. So I'll say it. I always feel so bad. But yeah, that's who I'm going with.
I also think he's not offended by it if people say Michael, because like in our language it's written as Michael, right? So we're not speaking the same tongue, so it's kind of understandable.
I know I feel so bad every time I say his name because I'm just going off of what I have been told, and I just don't know.
I'm proudly rocking Michael on stream every time instead of Michelle.
Maybe he wins and we can have him here and we talk about this in life.
But he's such a nice guy that like he wouldn't care if people call him Michael. Like he's too nice of a guy.
Imagine next week we're having the podcast episode. He's here after his victory. I have been right on the predictions, and he tells you to your face that you are wrong and you suck and you're a trash human being because he does in fact care, and you had no remorse about pronouncing his name wrong this entire time.
Let me tell you, it'd be great for viewership. That's all I'm saying. Wait, hey, you know what? We need more villains in VGC. Maybe I'll just start saying other people's names wrong too. You know what I mean?
For now, you'll be the villain. Dun dun dun. The plot twist.
Oh, this is Joe Ugarte on the stream now. Just saying everything wrong. No, Michael or Michelle, whatever. Kelsh, Senor Kelsh, we'll say. Great pick on your end. My pick, this is not out of left field because he's a great player. He's consistently been good the last couple of seasons, but it's not the same Italian names that you would think, like Luca Ceribelli, world champion, or, Marco Silva on this huge run. I'm not going to. Italy's on a run. And I think it's time for Giulio Tarlau to win this regional. He got top 8 in the latest Victory Road tour last weekend. Italy, like we said, like phenomenal VGC players at this point. I don't know if they're all like in some big Discord together working on these teams and top cutting every event, but they are phenomenal. I think it's Giulio's turn to win this one.
Yeah, nope, strong player. I think there is like 6 events back or something. I predicted him to win. Like I think it's a good choice. I believe in your choice.
All right, cool. So yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot on the pod this week, even if it's a little shorter than the viewers are used to. Let me look real quick because I don't know if sometimes I decide the question of the week without talking to you because I think it's a good question. I don't know if that's okay with you or not.
Yeah, no, that is fine. That's fine. Okay. I'm not offended. So,
for our question of the week, and if you ever want to ask Sierra and I a question, join our Discord linked down below. We have a weekly question by one of our listeners. It's from Flame G. And Flame G asks, if you could invite one person, basketball player, TV personality, whoever, to guest on the Pokemon broadcast for a weekend, who would it be and why? This is different from a podcast guest, Sierra. This person is going to San Antonio and they are now a guest host, guest caster, guest something on the broadcast.
Let's have the entire group of Twice come guest cast.
Don't you tempt me with a good time, Sierra. Don't. Oh my God, I would be. Oh my God, could you imagine?
That would be really funny. I think. Okay, so my first thought was thinking of like esports personalities. Just because obviously this is a space that we're in, and I think 2 people that I think would be hilarious and awesome in Pokemon would be Captain Flowers. First off, amazing caster. Oh my God. Also in terms of like interviewing, hosting, like Golden Boy has just like always been a huge inspiration to me, and that would be someone as well, like because this is just like people I respect and I think are amazing at what they do. Like, let's bring them in here. Shocks as well. Oh my gosh, absolutely goals. Love her. So all 3 of them would be people that I like. I would love to see on Pokemon. There are so many more. Like, there are so many great people in this space, but unfortunately, I have a job to keep. In terms of like a TV personality or something, like we're talking about Survivor, so maybe this is like a biasy answer, but like, could you imagine a Jeff Ropes like doing like exit interviews with people after someone gets Mrs. Draco Meteor on stage and he just like goes over and he turns their switch off and he's like,
and they're just like randomly covered in sand and mud now that they've lost.
I was just thinking of like the torch and like the tribe has spoken. He's like, your Miraidon has spoken. He turns off your switch and you have to exit the stage.
That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah.
I think shouts to Jeff. He's the man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I like from esports personality since I like Captain Flowers and Golden Boy. Those are definitely two guys that I look up to from their success. Hope to emulate one day. I think like, would it be crazy also to have someone like Cadril as just like not knowing what's going on and just the funny commentary that he would bring, like not he sees who's like a ugly Pokemon, I don't know, like Bruxish on stream or Sneasler, right? And like just hearing Cadril's reaction to those Pokemon, I feel like would be really funny. So that might be the esports personality I would choose. And like a general like sports or TV star, it's so tough because like there's just, you could just choose the most famous person. Like you just Kim Kardashian at a regional or something.
Like Beyonce to be casting your Pokemon your match,
Taylor
like no big
Swift
deal.
or something, right? But like they don't really, to our knowledge, they don't really like Pokemon. We have no knowledge that they're big Pokemon fans. So I'm trying to think of maybe like a like sports players or athletes that are gamers. Who
was it that was at NAIC last year?
That was Jamal Williams on the Saints, the running back. Yeah,
get him casted.
Oh, Jamal Williams. That's why we're lock emojis here. We're picking Jamal Williams to cast. Cast just like a random like round 6 day 1 match. He just has no idea. He's talking about One Piece and Naruto for some reason because he's just off the rails.
I've never laughed harder than that interview. He was so awesome. It was hilarious.
Just to sit there and be like,
no, that was awesome. That's some great stuff. Big vibes. That
would be so good. If we had Cadril and Jamal Williams casting together and like T-Pain is like our host or something, we toss the T-Pain. He's a streamer. He's a gamer.
Oh, we should get Mr. Worldwide.
Yes. Oh my God, dude. The possibilities are endless with this one.
Yep. No, 100%. But...
Do you okay. Theoretically, just to end this conversation, like, let's say we had another Los Angeles regional someday, right? And because that's where all the LA esports talent live, like, reasonably, do you think we could ever get like a Riot caster just to like show up and be like, oh, Captain Flowers, what are you doing this Saturday? You want to come to a Pokemon regional? Like, do you think that's feasible or no? You think they're like, no, I don't know Pokemon?
Well, I mean, if they don't know Pokemon, it's not in their best interest. It's not like you're going to like sign up for a broadcast you can't do at a tier 1 level just so like your career could be like laughed at, right? But if it's something they know, like, why not? Like, I think like if they were like offered, I think it would be cool. But I obviously wouldn't want them to come out and then just like get clowned on because they didn't know the stuff that we're expected to know, right?
Yeah, I think there would have to be an understanding with the audience, right? Like it's just like it's
but
a
would the audience
fun...
have the Yeah, but also from the audience perspective, like, if I was a player competing and I do not care about these people and they're just making a mockery of my game, like, I'd be a little like, it'd be different if I was fans, of course, but if like
Sure.
I just don't know them and like I'm on broadcast, I'm finally on broadcast, and then the entire show is just about this one person, I'd be a little peeved.
I'm just saying, if we had Captain Flowers on the stream, it would definitely break containment. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Like I'm saying, like on a level, like, like Captain Flowers, if you're listening to this, like we'll teach you VGC if you ever want to cast, and like that would be awesome. But I definitely think someone who doesn't know the game shouldn't be casting.
Sure.
But
sure.
I would love to teach Captain Flowers the game if you do want to come cast the game. Like we can chat.
Sorry, Taylor Swift, you're not eligible because you don't know the game.
Damn, what if she watches this?
Sierra says,
dude, again. We'll teach her the game. Taylor Swift, if you're watching this, if you have any interest in Pokemon VGC, we'll teach you. If you want to come cast a regional, you're always in every location that we have a major event anyways. Like, just take a couple hours off. Come see some Pokemon. Come chat.
That would be hype. That'd be, if this is the moment, Sierra. This is the moment where Pachirisu 2.0 started right here with Taylor Swift casting
I do
Pokemon.
think the Pachirisu moment would be broken by Taylor Swift casting the World Championships.
I think so.
Like, I just,
I think
that would do it.
Sejude would understand. So, all right, I'm number 2
so.
now. I get it.
Yeah, you know what? Like, if you're second to Taylor Swift, I think you're doing pretty good for yourself in the space.
Who would Taylor Swift's signature Pokemon be? Like, don't give me some lazy singing Pokemon answer. Like, you know.
My first thought was, well, if Taylor Swift was playing League of Legends, it'd be Seraphine. So,
So I'm thinking like something like yellow because she's a blonde. She's got blonde hair. Something like, I don't know. It's a tough call. Something like cool.
Maybe we'll have to answer this question next.
We'll just be lame and say Pikachu. Got it.
Well, I'm just trying to think, and I don't have a good answer.
Who's the fluffy like Ampharos, Mega Ampharos to be specific? Shinx could work. Very Taylor Swift coded Pokemon.
No, I do think like not knowing any Pokemon knowledge, like first off, like do like more of a cat-like Pokemon and something just like fluffy and cute, and then that's like it. Like,
she does like cats.
She does like cats. We should ask Lou. Lou's sleeping right now because we're recording this late at night, but we can ask Lou and like come back to this or like something because
Lou is Taylor Swift's spirit animal. So
yeah, Lou would know. So all right. Anything else for this week, or is that?
No, we got a Lou reference. We got a Lee reference. We might as well be British at this point.
All right. I mean, I'm already Commonwealth, so close enough, I guess. But all right. As for us, that is it for this week of OHKO. Please let us know what Pokemon you think Taylor Swift would be in her mascot or anything else about this episode. Of course, we'll be watching the Birmingham Regional Championships. Catch us in the Twitch chat. Are you planning on co-streaming at all, or?
No, definitely not, because I don't know if I'm going to wake up early enough to. But
that's probably exactly why I won't be co-streaming it. So maybe things will change. I don't know, but do not count on it. But I'll be in the Twitch chat for later matches. And yeah, thank you all so much for listening. If you made it to this point, make sure to be joining the Discord as well. Like, follow whatever service you're listening on so you're tuned in for more episodes. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next week.